Well, welcome. This is the March verse virtual reading, and we've got two great features. Ahmed, Hussain Ahmed and Saddiq Dzukogi and Dzukogi. I'm sorry, I'm killing your name, and I meant not to. But anyway, we're all here. I think everyone who signed up for the open plus more have showed up. And I haven't checked it since yesterday. So if you signed up since then, you should probably tell me. Oh, hello, Joe. It's good to see you. Then we're going to get started with our first feature, who is Hussain Ahmed. And he's a Nigerian poet and environmentalist who holds an MFA in poetry from the University of Mississippi and is currently a PhD student at the University of Cincinnati, which is close to you, Dick, I think.
Yes.
His poems are featured or forthcoming in Agni, Poetry Magazine, the Kenyon Review, A Public Space, American Poetry Review, and elsewhere. He's the author of chapbook Harp in a Fireplace from Newfound 2021 and debut collection Soliloquy with the Ghosts in the Nile from Black Ocean Press. So I welcome you and let's hear your work.
Okay, I can go ahead, right? Thank you, Robbie, for inviting me to read with my very good friend Saddiq Dzukogi. I'll be reading from my collection Soliloquy with the Ghost in Nile, which was published with Black Ocean Press. It's kind of like a book about ghosts and the ritual of like grieving and healing that's often influenced by my Nigerian origin or my Islamic origin, I would say. You'll be hearing many about ghosts and the ritual of it. But this is no way to scare anyone. It's kind of like a book about the dead to reiterate the function of the people who survived some of the violence that I wrote about, or the death that happened in the poems. And the first poem that I would read is like the second poem. I like to start with it because it's titled Flight. I felt like it's a good way to start the poem that says Flight. And the poem was kind of like inspired by, I think it was of a plane crash that happened at the time. I wrote in response to it. So this is titled Flight. Flight. The day an airplane crashed, the air became heavy. The aura of mouth sore with grieving songs. I was taught to plead with the fire in my broken tongue, as would an owl tired of nocturne. Today we celebrate everyone that died, everyone who had a name similar to ours. I felt all our dead reincarnated in me today. My body is now soundproof. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I saw the message about my mic being muted.
Sure.
I felt all our dead reincarnated in me today. My body is now soundproof. I do not recognize the song that slip out of my mouth. How the war made us a name. Before the war, we had names we inherited from the dead. They keep us warm until we start to lose those names to the wind. The long corridors in my throat are of tinted glass windows. All that happened belongs in the darkness of what may wash off the memories of all the dead. I wake up because of my arms and it surprises me that I still feel dead after gulping a cup of pap. I feel strange in my father's rock too. even though it keeps me warm. I need all the heat I can get today so the eggs in my body can hatch and be set free to make nests far from here, where they would not be haunted to deliver obituaries in envelopes that are large enough to be registers, wherein our names are written for each condolence visit. The war made us names too much to keep up with. We learned to escape the burning before we learn that every name we inherit comes with allergies. I threw a harp inside the fireplace, and it poured out the tunes I once heard Baba played on it. It stopped when it got swallowed in the flame. All we inherited still burned. This next poem is called, titled Curfew, and I feel like at a time, growing up in a place, in a very beautiful town called Kaduna in Nigeria, my kind of like childhood memory are often like shaped by my experience of like a post-violence days that kind of like followed by curfew. So when there's a crisis, there's always a curfew to like limit the damage or destruction. And oftentimes when I think about my childhood, it's always one that I, in a way, always think about the experiences that happened in those moments where we had curfew. So this is titled Curfew. My body was colonized in a language of silence. Strands of my hair entrapped the ghost in the wind. They were now held prisoner, but their abrasions kept them warm or stuck. The sky was void of stars, or the smoke hid them from us. We became satellites to each other. Our shadows orbited our bodies from distance until they became entangled. We were planets of silences during the curfew. The stones in the fireplace were all we had to fill up our wounds. Instead, we let houseflies sing around the openings. Baba kept guard throughout those nights with his knife sharpened with grief. His body was a fireplace or a mosque full of ashes. We said our prayers silently. Soldiers slipped into the house and stained the wall with cement. All our children woke up with bloated stomachs. The wall was blue of a raging sea, threatening to wash out the whole town. We plucked out sponges from our tongues and scrubbed the house clean before we dressed our wounds with fallen flags. All we inherited from father was saved in an ambulance. The siren was muted, but its blue light flickered in the night. We got stuck on rods of bones. Now it's our turn to unpack the street. Our turn to become the grave diggers. A dead tree grows from Baba's grave. We stand around it, for its shadow does not keep out the sunbite. After the curfew, we got served shai to heal the sores in our mouths. These scars are evidence that we mistake silence for peace. So this is like a taste of what the many part of the poem is talking about. It's kind of like the experiences of what the aftermath of a war or of a crisis, because as Muslims, it's not like permitted to talk about maybe the wounds or like some about the dead, but we can only talk about the experiences that we have with these people, or we cannot talk about some things that we see in them that other people might not see. And I'm saying this because my father, like my grandfather, is an Islamic scholar, also kind of like a writers and poets that write in Arabic. So when people die, it's a tradition of the Nigerian. When people die, as a traditional Muslim community, the people are being brought to the mosque, where I happen to be a son of an Islamic scholar. So when people die, we get to like wash their body and prepare them for janaza, which is like the actual burial. So some of my experiences are like the aftermath of how I thought about those past experiences and how I think about it now as someone who is not currently living in Nigeria for the time. Actually, I was in Nigeria in January. But like now, I feel like in a way, I'm a little bit away from that experience of that constant spiritual practice of getting to prepare people for burial. So some of my poems are not really into the gory state of what it means to be dead, but the experience of someone who experienced dead people or who experienced grief as a kind of like an afterthought. So this is like how the poem goes. And this next poem is titled Aftermath, which kind of I feel like reflects the basic experience that I'm trying to describe to you all now. Aftermath. We dug the ground so many times, burying a dead body or sowing a seed, both of which did not grow. Our griefs are colored as the soot from a lantern gasping for fuel. My neighbor gave birth when silence was all that can be cherished, like clean water gushing out of the rusty mouth of a tap. She was brave to have sealed child's mouth when he was not suckling her nipple. Baba amends the house constitution. We must punctuate every 10 minutes with Ayatul Kursi. For protection, it must be in whispers. This is how you know the people are tired of digging. Our Baba sits around a bonfire with the peacekeepers. Their hands cup their cheeks. The sun creeps upon our dark faces. Again, we excuse the intrusion. Mama tells us to dance when we can. It could be the last time we hear her sing. So that's Aftermath. And in a way, you might be noticing some words that are non-English in my works. This is because I feel like the beauty of some of those phrases are in the original terms, and having to maybe translate them into English would not do justice to the effect that I feel they would have if I let them be. So one of the other poems that I'll be reading from a different section of the book is called Satellite. So I feel like there was a time I was thinking about the culture of poets and writing self-portraits. And I think how they work is when people write self-portraits, I've always been fascinated by that concept of poets writing self-portraits. But for me, there was a time I was thinking about the influence of like the contemporary as someone who's a student of poetry myself and who pays attention to the effect of what these forms do. I thought about Satellite, which is a kind of like a technological way of connecting to people or places that may be kind of like distant from you. And these sections that I'll be reading from. So I decided at the time I wrote many poems titled self-portrait, satellites and Wi-Fi poems that have to me the same effect that I would think of self-portraits. So this is called Satellite Phone Call as a form of supplication. I make supplications to the birds whose feathers were blades lost in war, birds whose bones could no longer be found in the museum because they flew over the face of the sky in a time of climate change. I come from a line of hunters who did not wait for darkness to come. Instead, they sing in the woods until the deer comes to the fire and becomes frozen in the rays. I make supplication to the owls that died in flight. Love letters clip between their beaks. It never gets old to open my mouth to show my mother that I have her brown teeth. She carries all her grief with ease, like feathers on the boards of arrows traveling in a straight line. I make supplication to her hands decorated in henna, though it loses its hue to the water during ablution. I make supplication to the stitches on my mother's stomach. It was the first sign that I was born to make a mark from the scars she inherited from spreading her wings in the wind. So I think I'm running out of time. Maybe I'll just read one more or two more poems. And that'll be it. Thank you again for the invitation. So I'll read the last poem that I'll read would be from the title poem, Soliloquy with the Ghost and Now. I hope I find it now. Okay. So I'll just read another one. I'm sorry, I can't find it. Just don't want to waste time. Wi-Fi in the Cemetery will be my last poem. Thank you for inviting me and for everyone coming to listen. Wi-Fi in the Cemetery. When they found him, he was without his eyes. There is a need for free Wi-Fi in all the cemeteries across this country. Every day, a dead man is assumed on a journey, and nobody wants to check their friends where only ashes could be found. I lost a friend one Eid. We cheered as he dove into the river. Today, history is our enemy, with spears and spades in place of forks and spoons. I stare at my phone expecting a call from my drowned friend. We sit on a bench wrapped in the blooming fragrance of despair, expectant of a miracle, and a verse of the Quran to calm the fire that comes with prophecy. We are yet to master the art of mourning, so no one cries. Praise the sky for how well it mourns. We rehearsed how to break the news when we got home. That day we became men with beeps under our chins. We folded the grief in our pockets. The news got to his mama before we got home. I still expect an angel to knock on our door before the pain slips away, before we decide who wears his clothes. Thank you so much. I have to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. That was wonderful. Our editor of First Virtual, James Lewis, would like to say something, I think. So go ahead.
I would like to apologize profusely to you, Hussain, for interrupting your first poem. I keep noticing people join and not muting themselves. And for me, it is an incredible irritant for Zoom meetings to join and not mute yourself when there's a featured reader. So my apologies to you. And that said, we would love to have links, if they're not already in the chat, to where we can purchase your work. And then thirdly, we have a lot of visitors today that I have not met and not read. We would love to have you as part of the Verse Virtual community. If you would browse to our website, there is submission information if you'd like to submit. We publish monthly, and we would love to have your voices. That's it.
It's wonderful to have you. We don't just want to be an American publication or community. We want to be international, and we're very happy to be. Our second feature is Saddiq Dzukogi, and he too is a Nigerian poet. He's an assistant professor of English at Mississippi State University and the author of Your Crib, My Qibla, is that correct? Winner of the 2021 Derek Walcott Prize for Poetry and the 2022 Julie Suk Award. He's the recipient of numerous fellowships from the Nebraska Art Council, the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, PEN America, and Abidi International Residency. His poetry is featured in various magazines, including Poetry, Plowshares, Kenyon Review, Poetry London, Guernica, Cincinnati Review, Gulf Coast, and Prairie Schooner. Saddiq lives and writes from Starkville, Mississippi. Welcome.
Thank you so much, everybody who's here. I'm extremely excited to read with Hussain. I think I lived the last 9 years of my life in Nigeria, in Kaduna, went to the same school as he. So yeah, I'm repping Kaduna here. I'm gonna start by reading from the book, my book, Your Crib, My Kepler. And I just wanted to say, Robbie, you survived, I think the last person who tried to say my last name swallowed it and died. So you're alive, so you did great. I'm gonna read the first poem in the book, and it's titled Wine Glass. Wine glass. When your mother found strands of your hair hung up in the teeth of your comb, your father scrolled them into a wine glass. It bites him hard that your life happened like an hourglass with only a handful of sand. This split to the seam of his body, a split of darkness that won't kill him, but squeezes adrenaline into his veins so he leaves through the pain of your absence. He's not all right to speak. His voice rims with bereavement. And he wants to sing by your grave, child, now that birds blow songs through the window. Count sadness on the prayer beads necklaced around his collar. If he had known the sky would inhale you out of him so quickly, he would have stayed with your toes forever in his hands. Your face is still everywhere, even in the places he's not looking. He presses a deep kiss on your grave, on your forehead, hands cloudy from rubbing the grave as if on your tender skin. The distance he feels is more than the 400 kilometers that often stands between you. He'll travel this far to hold you against the moon. They say you're like his reflection, pulled out of the mirror he stares into. To pull you out, he plunges his hands inside himself and pulls. I'm going to read one more poem from the book. It's about our daughter Bahara, who we lost a while back in 2017. And the last poem I'll read from the book is titled Waterlog. Waterlog. When mother whispered, "What doesn't kill you?" I replied, "Turns me into a living corpse. I am the spitting image of my shadow, face absorbed into a night aching from what has been ripped off. I'm fluent in my silence. What transpires after stars collapse? What happens if the dead turn into trees, curled into the passage of time, blabbering about its inadequacy to erase existence? The agony is a silent war in my body. Each time I open my mouth to speak, inhaling more pain that jam-packs my lungs like a riot ground. Come into my foxhole with eyes that see what others can't. Let's shadow each other. I'll collect the light that leaked into the Persian River. My eyes are a window, waterlogged with tears. I cannot see anything other than what frightens me. I am leaving off my fear. How do I consent to joy? If it's a currency, what can it buy? All I want is to crawl away from a house built in perpetuity for grief, with corners spidered with longing, pain, and tears. My tongue inside a keyhole cannot unlock the door. Thank you. I'm gonna jump to read newer stuff, making some poems. And I'm just going to read something that just came out in the Georgia Review. I have 3 poems there, so I'm just going to quickly read those. And the first one is titled, "We're All Casualties of Our Absence." When you're diabetic, A little thin like athlete's foot can grow a mouth that, if allowed, would swallow first the toe, then your leg, and often your whole life. My wife sometimes sings at the kitchen sink. Somewhere behind me, I could feel her grief sprawled over, pacing like a thick frame of dark fashioned after my own body. I don't see how anyone could stop a beast like that from consuming me. But the thing that terrifies me with loud footsteps live inside of her. Body like a moose, absorbing grief without flinching. Growing older is but learning to house grief in our body. We're at the mercy of time's fury. I burst into tears, hoping the road gets slippery for what is chasing after me. Under my breath is a country drowning from the weight of its own worries. Under my breath, I pulled up a chair. A prayer suits the beast in my chest. There's guilt. There's me absorbed in the thought that I have booked a flight to America for myself and my wife, so all her loved ones could die behind her back. The next poem is a Nebraska poem. It's titled The Great Plains. Because I have royal blood, I forget tradition. In Hausa, Sa'alali can mean rinsing the body with hyena. Two tongues often can't make the same meaning. A char grill smokes the sky with aroma of chicken wings. In a field, my sons are chasing after birds. The sun is dying for the day. If I could count 1,000 fireflies that couldn't subdue even the fleas of night. I spit Ayatul Kursiyu on my children. I cannot see Jane, but mother trained me to fight them. For Eid, before a crescent told us to wrap up Ramadan, my wife with bare hands, cardboard, made one and hung it behind the wall facing the house Qibla. In America, a Muslim must look Arab or wear hijab. And since I am Black, I must want the sidewalk for only myself. Instead of loving, we are taught to fear God. But fear is a prison, and we're animals trapped in the aviary of our faith. All my life, I hold up Quran like a compass, a map of a country that only exists in my heart. What if hell is a wilderness that does not exist? The next poem that I'd read is titled When I Feel Most Nigerian. And it's in the weirdest of places. It's when I'm confronted with a menu. It terrifies me because it reminds me that I am a foreigner. When I feel most Nigerian. In the frosty breath of a winter night, boot deep in snow, tired of waiting for a bus already 20 minutes late, I decide to walk, plowing through a marsh yard of hail, picking pieces of ice whittled into crab limbs and lobster shells, souvenirs melting in the heat of my cupped palms. I bob, a steam of acid surging in the lair of my neck. I taste the back of my esophagus. A swell of leftover food like a puff of cloud in my mouth. I say I am someone who conjures a hummingbird, virtuosus wings perching on wind, a stench, a memory. I say it looks like a chat to a place disremembered. And I think of the slice of Milano pizza at Yaya's, how I said to Monica, confronted with a menu in American restaurants, I feel the most Nigerian. Chicken korma, shrimp pukaras, or jumbo shrimp dipped in spiced lentil, battered and deep fried, or mashed chickpeas, tahini, olive oil, and spices served with naan crisp. All this make a foreigner of me. Without recommendation, I often kept waiters waiting. A trail of merriment settles, the weather changes continents. I remember the sound of Muezzin, now a forgotten chorus from the back throat of a megaphone, a ritual refrain I used to begrudge at dawn, a refrain that banishes sleep from my weary eyes. How I miss the things that once troubled me. How I miss my mother's tour the mionkuka, the meal I continually trashed behind my primary 5 classroom because it was too local to be cool. I am now a lobster shedding my old shell, growing a new one. At the library, I recall everything seemed calm through the glass frame of a window. Even the turmoil of 2 friends fighting seemed refined. At a seasoned behest, a long line of trees forfeit their colors. Without sound, everything appears consensual and orderly. When I eat, there is cramping in the walls of my stomach. I'm ingesting another culture. When I eat, I am satiating the hunger of others. I have a long line of things I can no longer eat, food my body is reluctant to break down: asparagus, onions, wheat, barley, mushroom, garlic, black beans, no goat milk or any animal milk. No soy milk, though I've got a 1000-watt Ninja blender that can grind soybeans easily to that purpose. I still make tofu for my wife. Oatmeal is okay. For breakfast, black tea isn't. I see a boy flapping his hands, bewildered why he isn't in the sky like the waterfowl he chases after, startled into flight. Sitting in the shade of a spindle tree, arranging its fallen fruit into a fence of sandcastle, I asked my son, with calloused hands, whose home are you building? And my wife stops cutting the spinach for dinner and looks at her own hands as if their mouths churning with answers. I think, yeah, I still have like 5 minutes. So I'm gonna read a new manuscript that I started to abandon a new manuscript. I know it's confusing. The title of the manuscript is tentatively Bakandamia, which in Hausa means the praise masters, the praise singer's master song. So such hubris. And I would read, what should I read from here? I would read the title manuscript, whatever. Bakandamia, year 2023. I swear to you by the night's stardust, by the valley's low-pitching voice that hums like a cello, by the home that wanted me as much as I wanted it to want me. It was just not enough. It was just hands I saw release the anchor, birds whistling, spitting their melodies into water as boat floated away. My body was never again in its embrace. I love it more than an ecstatic welcome could prove. I love it more than a bitter goodbye could disprove. I sit in the quiet arms of mountains, resting its body around the town where I grew up, climbing its shoulders, seeing the central mosque's minaret look into the sky like sentinels, piercing God's lagasse of silence. I will myself to return home each time someone spat at me while I walk the streets at night, or yell at me while I'm on the phone speaking to my country. My mother and sisters are still under the rubble of Naira, a currency as brittle as a crumbling house. And I'm outside dying of worry, sending whatever dollars I can save from the ravenous mouth of inflation. The night is a sail beckoning me towards the shore of my wants. The night is Inna, in her resplendent robe, the one who makes the call. Her tongue is the light leaning into the darkness of my mind and licks me clean of my anguish. I miss stepping into the punchy smell of shea butter seed and memory fading like the weary voice of an owl. My life becomes less and less familiar to me. When I'm down on my knees, the vultures that once circled my childhood hours cry out in the lonely sky. This brings nobody peace but nostalgia. This conflict is an anvil, and I want to put myself down where the hands of bliss can hold my face and mold me a new body. Mother says suffering is a worship, and tears is the slippery hands of prayers reaching into the hidden pockets of God for the things I most desire. But can my daughter breathe again 5 years after bidding her mortal body goodbye? In the cemetery, my voice is a war of attrition between fantasy and reality. There is no ceasefire in my heart. It is from one grief to another, one sickness to another, and grief's fury cannot be quelled by even the purest love, and not even the bluest flame can swallow my sickness. In my nightly trance, I am walking home, all 10,000 miles long. I am steering my way out of the groundswell of myth. What else is there to find here but a gathering of taillight, a scar sped away to God knows where? I have lived for 34 years. For 34 years, my body has been falling apart. My tongue is soaked in the soil of my forefathers. I learned their language in the street, in the talking drums of night, in the flute of days, chasing after pelele in the fields, and learning to cartwheel with my friends. Language is the long song of our lives, and Haske, the friend that comes to me in my dreams, says, I have met Adam and Hawa, whom I named my daughter after. My body blades are unable to slice off the pressure of my existence, unable to slice the throat of the beast of my existence. And only a shadow can speak. Night is the milk of light. Night is the truce between battles of spirits. The night is a fine wedge between them, their petty grievances. With such industry they scheme, and my body smells of the urine of misfortune. I am in most parts made entirely of grief. Summering around the Cape of folklores, there is similarity between Beowulf and Bayajidda, both killed by a beast, one in the mead hall and the other on the rim of a well. The horseman's sword is the door through which Serki walked out of the life of his house. Grundle's hand torn in Grundle's hope of escape. Perhaps mine too is a story of tragedy, but I am no hero. I am a gathering of fuchsia in a hanging basket, withering on the harsh afternoon sunlight, but always around in the shadow, pestering, touching that dark, that light drinker. Thank you so much for coming and for listening to my poems, and even the new one. It's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, but you know.
Incredibly wonderful. Thank you so much to both of our features, and please put your publication information into the chat, because I'm sure that people are going to be ordering your books if they don't already have them. And I forgot to say Ramadan Mubarak to you, and you must be starving reading that poem about food. And happy spring to everyone else. I don't think there's anyone from Iran, but happy Nowruz if you celebrate it. Our open mic will start in just a second. It's going to run one person long. I don't think anybody will mind. It's 2 short poems or 5 minutes, whichever comes first. And our first person on the open mic is Ed Ahern. Are you here, Ed?
I am.
All right.
Is share screen legal and moral, or should I just read?
It's legal, but you have to tell me, and you just did. So I will make that possible.
Okay. Very good. Let me get back to what I'm doing here. And that should hopefully come up. There we are. Everybody see that? They're both short.
Yeah.
The first one is what Graham Greene calls an entertainment, not too serious. The second one, a little more serious and a lot more formal. This one is called On Napping. A high boss of mine who didn't much like me used to say that naps kept him smart and healthy. Then he died of cancer. Despite this negative result, I find that naps are necessary, not for smarts or spunk, those are beyond me, just for metamorphism from sluggish to active, a cocoon I can creep into and reemerge butterfly-ish. And the second is really has it's metrical, but has no special format. It's called Visitations. My son arrived just now, his son in tow. Our meetings are too few to keep abreast of how our lives have shifted tone and flow, and how we had to change as we were stressed. The love still shared was born with traits now faux, yet it abides in changeling sympathy. Our differences are gulches set below the bridging skeins of trust and empathy. For there's no judgment shown by we who know. We cannot let the facts malform the true. Its basking warmth enabling us to glow in spite of lives that wandered off askew. Thank you all. And I'll pull it down.
Thank you very much.
I'm pretty sure that was well under 5 minutes.
Yes. Thank you very much. Our next reader is Kenneth Ween.
Just got to unmute. Okay.
It helps.
Unfortunately, somebody else is unmuted. What's going on here? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes. If
Hello?
you're not, excuse me, if you're not the reader, please mute yourself.
No. Okay. Well, you can hear me. You may not be able to see me. I don't know. I want to mention this book. It's a play, and it happens to have been written with one of my very dear friends, who is a Nigerian playwright, Umar Abdul, who's in Kogi State. And I wrote him a poem, and like Saddiq, I am going to new thing, and I even unworkshopped. It's called A Poem for Ramadan, and I just wrote it for my friend Umar. I asked my Muslim friend, which is worse, to paint the likeness of the prophet or destroy that portrait and thus erase his memory. A man cannot erase the memory of Allah, for he resides within our every mind, my Salah friend replied. The prophet, blessed be he, is but the mirror in which we see the truth of what we all believe. Break the mirror and truth remains, unshattered, still a whole and clear reflection that each shard retains. A portion still divine, though broken 1,000 times. With that, my friend turned back to prayer and spoke no more, except again proclaim, God is great. With this avowal of undying faith, entered prayer Iram and discoursed with me, the infidel, no more. And I want to tell you, Umar and I are very eager to find performances of our plays, which is why I'm mentioning The Rightful King. And if you do know of a theater company that might be interested, we will be happy to provide copies. And we don't expect royalties, just the opportunity to see it performed. So another short poem, and then I think I've used up my 5 minutes. This one is much lighter. It's called Courtship. Yes, I think perhaps. Be gentle, slow, and kind. Yes, I think perhaps you are. This is the time. Wait, unsure, perhaps. We've gone too far, too fast. Wait, unsure, perhaps. It's time for our release. Let us hold, touch, caress, We share a heart's duet. We share love's fiercest dreams. Let us hold, caress, rejoice. Entwined our song we voice. Love cares not what it seems.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next reader is Penelope Moffat.
Thanks, Robbie. I did not realize that both of our featured readers today would be Nigerian. It was wonderful to hear you, really wonderful. I was going to read two very silly poems and now I can't. When I was a child, my family lived for 2 years in Lagos, Nigeria, which was an experience that changed me very definitely, age 8 to 10, the mid-60s. And I have not written very often about that time, but I have written occasionally, and I'm going to read two of the memory poems. Monkeys. From the air, it might have been a turquoise sowbug resting beside a stretched out snake in emerald grass. That small car pulled to the side of the road, jungle pressing in on either side. A man and a woman, 3 skinny girls drifting, no one going far, chewing sandwiches and fruit, sipping sweet tea. Air warm and heavy on pale arms and legs, air full of water and the cries of birds deep in the trees. In the car, a jumble of dolls and books, sticky residue of saltines and arguments, spoken and unspoken, sibling quarrels, and the father's tamped down rage, his wish to be shut of them, this woman and these girls he must carry along, turtle trapped by his shell. One child holds a toy monkey, stares into green. Not a clearing, but a gradual adjustment of sight, and the wall becomes branches, leaves, a space through which bright-hued beings swing, chatter to each other and are gone, before she can say, look, before a nosy can extend his rubber hand. And the second one is called Goat. The end of Ramadan, the fasting over, time to slice bread, slit the throats of goats. From the back seat of our car, moving through Lagos streets, a glimpse of men in lantern light, surrounding a small creature meant for the night. Darkness everywhere except inside the circle. Flash of white teeth, someone staring in at me. The heat, the flies lifting with the sun gone, as if a pressing hand has been removed. We drive past as quickly as the crowd allows. A rope around its neck, its forelegs splayed, the goat cries out in terror as they drag it. I am small, too, and easily caught. Thank you for listening.
Wow. Wonderful. Thank you, Penelope. Our next reader is Margaret Duda. Oh, she must have lost her power. They've got a big storm with.
She's muted now.
I see
Oh, okay.
her.
Muted.
Yeah, there. Okay. I would like to read a poem from a book that's coming out in a couple months called I Come from Immigrants. It's called Coming to America. On the Bremen Pier, bustling with noisy immigrants, my mother finds a ticket office and stands in a line for Hungarians. Ticket in one hand, heavy satchel in the other, warm shawl around her thin shoulders. Margaret views her new reflection in the large window. Straight dark hair she cut to just below her earlobes, trying to look American for her waiting mother. Gone the waist-length braid that took years to grow. The shipping clerk shouts, "Next," and she moves to the counter, offering the prepaid ticket sent by her mother. He asked for her sponsor, but none was mentioned in the letter sent with the ticket. Anyone under 18 needs a sponsor. She explains she will turn 18 in a week. You cannot take this ship. Rules are rules. Margaret's shoulders shake with her heavy sobs. The old woman behind her with long white hair braided around her head offers to sponsor her. They both have second-class tickets and can share a cabin. The disgruntled clerk stamps both tickets. On board the huge iron-hulled steamship, they find their room. Margaret takes the upper bunk, giving Mrs. Ola the bottom, marveling at the sink with running water in their cabin. The rumbling engines groan, the horns bellow. The ship leaves the dock and the prow slices through the Atlantic, heading toward the setting sun. Margaret leads her sponsor outside for a final glance. She hears a violin playing a Hungarian folk tune, sees dancing in steerage. We should be there too. Mrs. Ola chuckles. Within 2 days, Margaret can keep nothing down as winds hurl the ship through tall swells. After 4 days, the winds calm, and Mrs. Ola wishes her a happy birthday, offering her a small wrapped box. Inside, Margaret finds a locket on a gold-plated chain for a photo of your mother who is waiting for you. In the dining room that evening, Margaret wears her gift as waiters singing happy birthday approach her with a cake and 18 lit candles. Others join in. She blows out her candles as a messenger calls her name. She raises her hand and he places a telegram in it. Your mother must have remembered. Margaret asks Mrs. Ola to read the English message. She reads it silently, then leads Margaret outside to 2 deck chairs. She takes her hand. Your mother died last night, child. She was very ill. Margaret screams. First, she was left in an orphanage and now abandoned in a strange country. I will be alone again. No, your stepfather will meet you. I must return to Hungary. Mrs. Ola shakes her head. Impossible. The ticket costs too much. But I must. Rosa Naney was the only mother I knew who loved me. I never heard my mother's voice or even saw her smile. If you want to hear her speak, listen to your own voice. If you want to see her smile, look in a mirror. A woman carried you in her womb for 9 months. You were 1. Now you must carry her in your heart and make her proud. Margaret watches dense sea fog slither over the ship's railing and silently glide toward them. Hearing the baritone blast of the foghorn, she wipes away her tears and leads her sponsor back inside, knowing she must find the courage to survive. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Very moving. Our next reader is Dick Westheimer.
Well, hello all. It's wonderful to be back in the virtual community. I really enjoyed the features, Robbie, and let's see, I can't find him on the screen now. James, I appreciate your curation of this event. I have a short poem that's part of a series that I'm working on, the latest and part of a series I'm working on in celebration of me buying a telescope for my 70th birthday. The word for darkness is light. I went out tonight under the lantern-hung stars, took a bucket to collect the light poured from the quantum hearts, and drank until I was tipsy, bewitched by their hymns, greedy for more of their secrets, which I promised to keep. But how can I not tell all who will listen the news? From here, I can see the dark between the stars, and it contains more stars. And the second poem is the title poem from my recent chapbook, I Forgive You. I apologize if you've heard this one before, once or twice. Chapbook just came out this year. It's called A Sword in Both Hands, Poems Responding to Russia's War on Ukraine. And the title poem deals with the ambivalence of the admiration I have for people who received Ukrainian refugees so generously, and the knowledge that those same people rejected refugees who did not look like them from non-European countries, which is the title poem, A Sword in Both Hands. And the epigraph is from Dion Brand. One is misled when one looks at the sails and majesty of tall ships instead of their cargo. A sword in both hands. We are a camera photographing itself, America. We are the majesty of tall ships, and we are the cargo, America. We are the jeweled sword, and we are the slain. We raise the blade and knight the brave in Ukraine, America. We bless them with crowns and say they look like America, America. We arm them with garlands of dragon-slaying missiles and javelins of the finest steel. We bear our sword arm, America, and intone our money prayers. We strip the evil enemy of coin and commerce. We are money gods, and we do this with the right hand, America. With the left, we hold a pock-marked sword notched with brown bodies. We place the sword in the hand of bonesaw kings who do not look like America, America, to slay those whom the camera cannot see, because we say, America, that brown and far away are not America. Those who have before them other gods than America are not America. Their brave cannot be knighted by our jeweled blades, because only those we say are America are America. The camera that can only photograph itself is a mirror that only sees itself, is a sword that only slays itself, America. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dick. Thank you very much. Our next reader is Robert Dean. No, I'm sorry. It's Anita. No, it is Robert Dean, and then Anita Laird.
And I need to share screen, Robbie.
Yep, you got it.
Okay. You should be seeing a painting on your screen that looks like just a long road with a fence alongside of it.
Yes, we see it.
Okay, this is from my second book. The book title is The Aerialist Will Not Be Performing. It's completely classic work to a Chicago painter by the name of Stephen Schrader. And I want to read the opening poem in the book. And if I have a minute after that, I'll read the ending poem, because it's kind of a journey along the book. So this painting is titled Between the Lines by Stephen Schrader. The poem, I hope you can hear me okay. We've got a high pollen count today and it's kind of affecting me. The poem is called Along This Road. Traveler, do not tarry. And I got the wrong glasses. Traveler, do not tarry. Horizons are never as distant as they seem. And just beyond this one or the next, I am waiting. There's a little inn, and once you arrive, though you suppose you do not know me, we shall sup. Traveler, wherever you are from, wherever you are headed, whatever burdens you carry, I will ease them. Take the half more today, tomorrow. Traveler, who you are is of no consequence, nor I, unless we walk this road together. For there is no other, and the fence keeps no one out and no one in. You see how it converges with your destination, though you know not what awaits. O traveler, I have left these guideposts just for you. Take my hand, the few pennies I possess, the rod and staff upon which your name is inscribed, the bread and wine. O traveler, do not let the sun beat you down, the miles blister your heart, the solitude steal your soul. The way ahead is clear of clouds. I've swept them from this threshold in anticipation of you. Traveler, do not tarry long. That's the opener and closer. This painting by Stephen Schrader is titled Last Day of Winter. And the last poem is titled The End. If you get here before I do, arrive at this last brittle day, and you cannot see your way through the drifts and fogs of winter. If you're sure this is it, there is nothing on the other side of the icy pond at the end of the trail and no skates to reach it with, that everything you have done has been in vain, that no one will remember you once you fade into the scratchy blur of this last blue-gray day, that you have lived a life of no more consequence than a flake melting on contact with your tongue. Just remember how glorious it was when we were young and flexed those muscular appendages, what the fleeting falling stars tasted like, how each moment and each season of your life enriched the banquet that is you, the full course that you have become. And I assure you, those who partook of you are sated for now and evermore, as will be I when you take my shivering hand and point me towards that faintest blush of spring, coming for us only just now like a new birthed day, all roseate and fresh, the infant of us, united finally. Come, let's make snow angels before we go. And that is it. Thank you very much. Get out of share screen here.
Thank you so much, Robert. Those were wonderful. And you can post the publication information in the chat. And now it's time for Anita Lyric.
Thank you so much. And I really enjoyed the featured readers, by the way. This poem has had many iterations, and currently it's in the form of a heibun or a heibun, which comprises of a prose poem and then a short haiku. Sharing God. The photograph says Warsaw, 1920. You and your friends step softly onto the public beach on the Vistula River, as if breaking into a private home, a private country. So hard to be invisible as Yiddish songbirds, always scorned as too loud and foreign for the Polish species. The unlocked sun makes you forget, and you swoop in to claim your territory, sand kingdom of the new Jewish girl and boy. Unafraid, you race with squawking gulls, shout orders to ice cream vendors, shriek above the tides. The hours fill your hands with dreams that you trace along bodies, slowly unwrapping. Nearby, others sit, lounge, tumble on mighty rocks, broken down over thousands of years into nomadic particles of quartz and feldspar in individual textures, colors, languages. The migrants are carried by winds and waters, constantly breaking down into smaller grains, all different, forever bonded along the shoreline. You hope today life begins, sinking together into the skin of the earth. circling forward and back, I touch you, grandmother, blown apart, forsaken grain, the earth moans, your spirit holds. The end.
Thank you, Anita. Our next reader is Mark Petrie, and welcome back, Mark. Mark has not been well, so I wanted him to read today.
Well, thank you, Robbie. I feel really blessed. I'm actually back working now as a teacher, and hopefully I'll make a pretty good recovery. This poem is called View from a Window. Life's long labyrinth opens to green fields of light and pain, humbling fields of joy and sorrow that speak of possibilities as they fall. I sit in light for the first time since my heart failed. From a chair in the alcove of the hospital room, I see light entering through the window. Translucent light caresses my skin, warms my face, penetrates my body like an X-ray. I look through the window at the yellow life-giving sun, as long as my eyes bear to look, then break into uncontrollable weeping at the warmth of the day, rejoicing that I am part of it. This morning, I can claim the shaft of light through the hospital bedroom, which ignites the fire of life within me, cutting through my mind to remind me of all that I desire to fulfill before I slip through that window into the final dark night.
Thank you, Mark. Did you have another one?
No, that's fine. I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, then I will go ahead and read a couple of short poems that I thought were in the spirit of our features. I have to find them. The first one is called Regret, and it's a golden shovel from a line by Bridget Pegeen Kelly. On this night and many others, just as I close my eyes, the whole past opens out forever like the midnight sky, heart dark and deep. It is the night my mother dies in her sleep, and I am not there to slip the ring of hammered gold worn thin off of her finger. I touched this band etched with unreadable signs, feeling its heavy sweetness. Here's another one. And these are from my collection, Everything Will Be Transformed, that has not yet been picked up. This poem's called Blast. My parents died at 94, and yet the shock wave rocked the quiet chamber of my life, exposing all the weakness in its frame and beams. I watched my father die, followed his ragged breath for days, a stony path twisting up a barren hillside. 4 days later, I held my mother in a cardboard box, bone and ash, much heavier than I'd imagined. For weeks, I'd think that I should call my father. I'd have the same dream every night, waking with my heart loud in my ears. I had left the gerbils without water, forgot to feed the fish for months. I knew what I would find returning to my parents' house, the bodies I would have to claim. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks to our features and to everyone at the open mic and to our whole First Virtual community and to Jim Lewis, always for being the editor. of this journal.
I have a couple of quick things, Robbie.
Okay.
Hussain, your description of the funeral preparation and rituals reminded me of something I'd completely forgotten, and that is a movie from 2009 called Departures. It's a Japanese movie, and very specifically about the funeral rituals. Absolutely worth seeing if you haven't. But that brought me to another thought, and that was, because we are such a diverse group, I am going to make one of our future optional themes death rituals, death and funeral rituals, because there are so many fascinating things that happen around the world. And if you happen to be cloistered into one culture, you miss so much. So I'm putting that as a future optional theme for Verse Virtual to see what comes of it. But thank you to all of you who attended today. This was another exceptional reading. Our next Verse Virtual event will be on the 15th of April, and it will be another book party, which is designed to give you a chance to present and market a book. The link on the website will take you to that. It looks like we still have at least a couple of spots left open. So if you are in a situation where you'd like to promote your book, you have 5 minutes to introduce yourself, the book, and read one poem. They are great fun, and we would welcome anybody who wants to come. And again, thank you. And thank you, Robbie.
Thank you. And I should mention that our next reading, I don't have the date offhand, but our Poetry Month readers are Allison Joseph and Lynn Thompson. So that'll be another bang up reading. And I welcome everyone to come. Thank you so much. And we'll see you hopefully before next month.
Thank you,
Thank
Robbie.
you.
You're welcome.